13th century, a time of crusades, swords, faith, and, although it seems incredible, of children who embarked on their own tragic crusade. It sounds like fantasy, like legend, but it is a real story, full of pain, deceit, and lost hopes. Imagine, not knights in shining armor, but thousands of children, barefoot, poorly dressed, inspired by the words of a shepherd boy, who leave their homes, abandon their toys, their families, their everyday lives, and set off. Where to? For what purpose? And the most crucial question, what fate awaited these young souls, drawn into the whirlwind of adult intrigues. Today, we will delve into one of the most enigmatic, heartbreaking, and instructive pages of history, the story of the Children's Crusades, and I assure you that the end of this story will leave you deeply moved, making you reflect on many things. Europe, in the 13th century, is not just a continent, it is a boiling cauldron of passions, contradictions, and ambitions. On one hand, the bloody fight against the Albigensian heresy, where the flames of the Inquisition's pyres consumed not only heretics but also innocents. Endless wars like the conflict between Bulgaria and Byzantium tore the lands apart. On the other hand, the Crusaders, who were supposedly meant to bring the light of faith, but often, instead, engaged in looting, conquering Constantinople, devastating the kingdom of Cilicia in the Levant. Their true motivations were not so much holy convictions as the thirst for power and wealth. And at this moment, the Pope, like a chess player, seeks new moves, new opportunities to expand his influence. His gaze is fixed on the north, on the pagan Livonian tribes who could be converted to Christianity, encountering, as he believed, relatively little resistance. And then, like thunder in a clear sky, in the spring of 1212, in France, in the village of Cloyes, a boy named Stephen appears. He is only 12 years old, a common shepherd, illiterate, but he claims that Christ himself appeared to him in the form of a pilgrim and gave him a scroll, a message for the King of France, urging him to gather an army of children and march to liberate Jerusalem. Stephen, possibly, did not even fully understand what he was saying, but his words, his fervent faith, his childlike innocence acted on people like a magnet. He spoke in a simple yet convincing manner, recounting miracles, the divine destiny of the children. The chroniclers who describe these events years later noted in Stephen an astonishing combination of naivety and a kind of innate shrewdness, an ability to influence the crowd. And the people, weary of wars and cruelty, believed him. They sought hope in him. Stephen, no. 12 years old, this little prophet, and his spontaneously gathered army, where instead of swords there are sticks, instead of shields, homemade slings, attract more and more attention. News of him spreads throughout France. Even, imagine, he is presented to King Philip, c'est tout. The king, an experienced politician, sees in this movement more than a blessing, a threat. At first, Pope Innocent III possibly harbored the hope of using this youthful energy for his own purposes, as a tool of pressure, as a living symbol of faith. But very soon the situation gets out of control. The children are not disciplined soldiers. It is impossible to control them. The king finally considered this undertaking a complete madness, a dangerous folly, and transfers the decision to the judgment of the University of Paris, the center of scholarship of the time. And the university issues its verdict. The movement is the work of the devil. The children must be sent home, the instigators punished, but stopping this wave, this tsunami of youthful faith and desperation, is already impossible. It's like trying to stop an avalanche with bare hands. Children, between the ages of 7 and 14, inspired by the speeches of Stephen and other young preachers who spring up like mushrooms after the rain, organize true religious processions. They walk along the roads, sing psalms, pray, talk about miraculous healings, about signs. The atmosphere heats up to the limit, turning into a collective hysteria. Imagine, along the roads of France, crowds of children advance, according to some estimates, up to 30,000, and among them there are not only sincere believers blinded by religious fanaticism, but also join those who see in this chaos their own advantage, fugitive monks who have lost their faith and seek sustenance, small criminals hiding from justice, ruined merchants hoping for a miracle. They use the children's naivety, their faith, their desperation for their own selfish ends. A similar story, like a reflection in a mirror, occurs in Germany. There, the leader is Nicholas of Treves, a 10-year-old boy, but unlike Stephen, behind Nicholas is his father, a cunning and calculating shoemaker with a very dubious reputation. He, like a puppeteer, pulls the strings, guiding his son and using his popularity for his own interests. If in France Stephen is transported in a decorated cart, surrounded by noble ladies, almost living like a saint, in Germany all the attention is focused on Nicholas, who, by the way, also gathers around him a huge number of followers, children, teenagers, and even adults who have lost all hope, who really wanted to achieve the organizers of these strange and tragic crusades. The true motives remain a mystery, a subject of debate among historians. Some believe that the children did not even think about traveling to the distant Holy Land. They were just an instrument, pawns in a great game of adults, a means to attract attention, to collect donations, to support new and larger crusades planned by the kings and the Pope. Other historians, however, are convinced that the organizers and, first and foremost, the children themselves, sincerely believed in their special mission, that they, pure and innocent, were destined to liberate the kings, the Holy Sepulchre. They believed that their faith was stronger than swords, that God was on their side. But, be that as it may, the result is one. A heartbreaking tragedy. Hundreds, thousands of children never returned home. They died of hunger, disease, exhaustion. They became victims of bandits. The most terrible thing is that many of them fell into the hands of slave traders, who only saw them as human merchandise. The German and French children's crusades, despite their tragic common thread, had their own particularities. For example, in Germany, and this astonishes the imagination, just in the city of Cologne, for the needs of the Crusaders, for their equipment, for their sustenance, several tens of thousands of silver marks were collected. It is a colossal sum, equivalent to more than 3 tons of pure silver. One can only imagine how strong the influence of this movement was, how much people believed in its success if they were willing to sacrifice such enormous sums. Moreover, the authorities in different countries reacted to these events differently. The Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, Frederick II Hohenstaufen, a tough, pragmatic man known for his cynical attitude towards religion, did not mince words with the child crusaders. He gave a direct order to establish military control over all those recruiting children, and in case of resistance, to destroy them by force. This led to bloody confrontations. The detachments of child crusaders, driven to desperation, offered resistance, attacked villages, looted, and set houses on fire. The violence, cruelty, and the enormous number of casualties, both in battles and due to hunger and disease, caused support for the movement among common people to begin to diminish rapidly. Mothers wept for their missing children. Fathers cursed those who had dragged them into this adventure. Many children, exhausted, sick, and hungry, simply fled, returned home if they had somewhere to return to, or sought refuge in villages where, out of compassion, they were fed and hidden. The movement, which had begun with such elevation, ended in great disaster. So much hope was gradually disintegrating. It turned to dust. The French children, led by Stephen, reached the Mediterranean Sea coast relatively quickly. They believed the sea would part before them, as it did for Moses. It would open the way to the Holy Land for them, but the miracle did not occur. The sea remained a sea. But for the German Crusaders, it was much more difficult. A long and dangerous journey awaited them. A journey through the Alps, across mountain passes, where cold, hunger, disease, and bandits lurked. But even they, finally exhausted and weakened, reached the Mediterranean Sea to Genoa, and they too awaited a miracle. But instead of a miracle, two merchants appeared, Hugo Ferreus and William Porcus, who generously offered to transport the children across the sea in 7 ships for free. And here begins the most terrible part of the story. 2 ships filled with children were caught in a storm and sank off the coast of Sardinia. Everyone on board died. The survivors, according to legend, built a church on the island dedicated to the Immaculate Conception. But today, there is no trace of it. The other 5 ships did not reach the Holy Land. They changed course and docked in North Africa, in Algiers and Egypt, where the unfortunate children, deceived and betrayed, were sold in slave markets like cattle, the boys as slaves for forced labor, or worse, as eunuchs in harems, the girls as concubines, as sexual slaves. And the most terrible, the most cynical part of this whole story is that none of the European kings, none of the chivalric orders, which were supposedly meant to protect Christians, even attempted to rescue these children from slavery. No one showed mercy. Some of them, a few, miraculously managed to survive and reach the Holy Land, but not as liberators, not as heroes, but chained, as prisoners, as merchandise that was resold from hand to hand. The last known group of children, sold in Baghdad, simply disappeared, vanished into the sands of time, their traces lost forever. The children's crusades are not just a historical episode. They are a tragedy that unfolded before the eyes of the whole world, a story of blind faith, of cruel deception, of adult cynicism that used children for their own selfish ends. It shows what a terrible, inhumane reality can hide behind the most seemingly noble and lofty ideas, and reminds us how dangerous blind faith is, how easy it is to manipulate the crowd, and how important it is to maintain critical thinking, even in the face of the most seemingly unquestionable authorities. Thank you for watching until the end. This story really makes you think, doesn't it? If you like this video, if it moved you, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. There are many more interesting and instructive stories to come.